All right, the purpose of this video is to give you the tools and techniques to be successful in completing Hidden Animal Part 2, your final version. This is what your document should look like at this point. You should have a template that's been locked, and then your painted layer. And please put the name Paint Bucket, Brushes, and Gradient on there because that's the tools that you're supposed to be demonstrating. I have gradients on my plants. I have gradient here. I have brushes. I used a brush to add some texture to my tadpoles here. And Paint Bucket, obviously, in many places. And when you use the Paint Bucket, it looks really flat. So the purpose of Part 2 is to add more texture to turn our flat 2D image to looking a little more 3D. And we call that form. So we have shape, which is kind of 2D, and form, which is 3D. We want to be able to kind of give it some depth. While we're talking about brushes and using pattern, I'm going to show you how to use your Paint Bucket with pattern. So this blue on here is very flat looking. It's not visually interesting at all. So I'm going to make a copy of my template here. Well, first I'm going to select that blue. Let's go to my painting layer. W for magic wand. Select all my blue. All right, so my blue selected, and then I'm going to make a copy of my template by dragging it down onto the new layer button. And unlock it, and now drag it above my paint bucket. And look, my painting is hidden even though it's on, right? And we're going to fix that in a minute. So I'm going to go to Paint Bucket, G. I still have my selection from my painting layer, my Paint Bucket layer. And up at the top, you can paint with a foreground color or a pattern. So you choose pattern. There are many, many patterns in here. If you don't have all of these, you can open up, let's see, can you add them here? I think you have to go to your pattern palette. So over here, and on the file menu, get legacy palette, patterns and more. Right. So, and I noticed that a lot of people were taking the pattern from the pattern palette, or panel rather. And when you do that, it creates a new layer. So I think for right now, it's best to choose your pattern from the option bar. And that goes the same for gradients. Okay, so I have here a water pattern. Notice that it's green. I'm going to then paint my template here. And of course I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to rename it pattern with multiply blend mode. Okay. Naming your layers is really important. I'm going to give it a big name because I want you to remember this, and maybe in the beginning be really explicit with your naming your layers, and then kind of move on to just shortcuts, but this is for you. All right, so Control D to deselect. Oops. And why this is white is because I made a copy of the template, right? So I have one piece of paper on top of the other piece of paper. And how we can fix that is to add a blend mode. Blend modes are used a lot in Photoshop, and you'll see that there are many different ones. So we have normal, which is our normal mode, which we're normally in. Dissolve kind of dissolves one layer on top of another. You can't really see any changes though. And then this next group is all about darkening. The next group is all about lightening. The next group are different types of blend modes. And the last one, these blend different colors together, right? Hue, saturation, color, and luminosity, right? And what we're doing is blending the layer, let me go back to my, we're blending, now this layer says multiply. So we're blending this layer with the layer below. Okay, and so now you can see my colors because this is just white. So it's going to maintain these colors. And the green, look it doesn't look green, it just looks blue. Right? You can maybe see a little bit of greens and blues. So what multiply does is it multiplies each color with itself and then divides by 255, and it's magic. It's math magic. All right. So what you notice that things are a little bit darker, right? So things that are dark are going to become a little bit darker. Things that are light are going to become just a little bit darker as well. You can change the opacity on that layer, right? If it's too much, to kind of get it where you like it. You can add multiple blend modes, right? I mean, multiple patterns. So maybe I have my opacity like pretty close at 100%, right? Now my water looks more like water. And maybe I want to add some texture to my frog that's going to have a lower opacity on it because I really want it to blend. So let's do one more. I'm going to create, this time I'm going to create just a new layer. Well, first let me go back to my template and select the frog parts that I want to texturize. I guess this should work actually. Go to my magic wand. Oops. And get my little froggy parts. Okay, again, contiguous is unchecked. That's why it selected all of that green at once. And this time I'm just going to create a new layer. Right, so this one I had to use multiply because I was using the template. Now this layer is blank, it's transparent, and I can tell that because it has this little checkerboard on it. Okay, and this is going to be frog texture. Again, I'm going to get my paint bucket. Oops. G. Again, I'm going to get a pattern, and this time it takes a while to get through these patterns, but maybe like a rock pattern might look nice on my frog. Kind of have to do a little experimenting. That kind of looks okay. I'm going to deselect. All right, but that's way too strong. Let's see what happens when we multiply. Right? Multiply kind of brings them together, right? Normal, it's more browns, right? So let's multiply this layer to maintain that greens of the original frog, but that's way too much texture for me. So I'm going to just drop this maybe about there. Oh, I should have texturized the eyes too. Kind of missed that. So I can have two different blend modes, right, with different opacities. So having a lot of layers just gives you a lot of choice. If I decided I didn't want any texture on my frog, just get rid of it, right? Don't have to repaint or anything else. So get used to using lots of layers and name them so you can change your mind later on. Trust me. We're going to end here, and then I'm going to create another video to show you the other required parts of this assignment.